My parents passed away when I was young. Before they died, they had helped the Vance family through a difficult period. And, out of a sense of duty, the Vances took me in. I grew up in the countryside with them, and with Mr. and Mrs. Vance's encouragement, I eventually married Leo Vance, their only son. He was the boy I had spent my childhood with, but I didn't know he was in love with someone else. After our wedding, he never touched me, but he allowed his parents and the community to believe I was the one who couldn't have children. They blamed me for it constantly. At the same time, they brought two infants, supposedly from a distant relative, and gave them to me to raise. Shortly after, Leo joined the military and was gone from our lives, rarely returning more than once a year. For 18 years, I raised those two children into young adults. When they were both accepted into the prestigious Crestwood University, Leo returned for the celebration banquet and he brought another woman with him. In front of all our friends and family, he announced that the two children I had raised were his biological children with that woman. As I watched the six of them, Leo, his parents, the woman, and the two children, standing together like a perfect family, I finally understood that I had been the only one who didn't know the truth. Overwhelmed by the revelation, I left in the middle of the night. I wandered aimlessly, and, in the darkness, I slipped and fell from a cliff. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the first year of my marriage. I found myself standing at the doorway of the family hall. Leo's mother, Mrs. Vance, sat with a serious expression while his father smoked his pipe beside her. The small room was filled with relatives. Leo was there, holding two small children, and his parents were there, but everyone else was looking at me. Mrs. Vance cleared her throat. "Amelia, you're here just in time. This child is from your Aunt May in the next village. She just had her fourth baby. I heard you and Leo are having trouble conceiving, so she sent the baby over to see if you would like to raise him." My eyes scanned the room and landed on Clara Shaw, who was trying to blend in with the crowd. She was looking at the child in Leo's arms with an expression of deep affection. So, she had already been a part of my life back then, hiding in the shadows. Everyone was waiting for my response. Mrs. Vance seemed confident, certain I would agree. For the past year, she had constantly questioned me about my fertility, making me feel ashamed and inadequate. I looked at Leo and asked, "Do you want to raise them?" He seemed prepared for the question and answered immediately, "That's for the women to decide. If you want to, I won't object." "All right then," I said calmly. "I don't want to raise them. But since you seem to, you should give them your full attention. Don't let their parents' kindness go to waste." "What did you just say?" Leo stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. The entire room went silent. I repeated myself, my voice steady. "I'm only 19. There's no proof that I can't get pregnant. Why should I raise someone else's children?" Leo's expression hardened with disapproval. "How can you be so unreasonable? Aunt May was trying to be helpful. I didn't realize you were so selfish." "Didn't you just say this had nothing to do with you?" I countered. "Why are you getting so upset now that I've said no?" His eyes widened, shocked that I would dare to challenge him. Mrs. Vance quickly stepped in to de-escalate the situation. "Don't say things you'll regret, Leo. I know you like the children. If you want to raise them, I will help you." Mr. Vance took a long drag from his pipe and added, "If we're going to raise them, we'll open the family registry tomorrow and put their names under Amelia and Leo's." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. In my past life, Mrs. Vance's support had meant she watched while I did all the work. Washing their clothes, feeding them, helping with homework, it was all my responsibility. They only ever showed up to take credit for my efforts. They never once considered my feelings. Faced with their unilateral decision once again, I raised my voice. "I am not raising them. If you register them under my name, I will file for a divorce." Without waiting for their stunned reactions, I turned and walked out of the house. I went straight to the village post box and found a letter addressed to me. I opened it, and my eyes filled with tears. Inside was a 100 yuan note and a thick stack of food and fabric ration tickets, all incredibly valuable in the 1980s. The letter was from Professor Alistair Finch, my parents' old university professor who had always treated me like a granddaughter. In my past life, I didn't find out until after the children were grown that he had been supporting me financially for all those years. The Vances had hidden it all from me. Inside the mailbox, I also found my acceptance letter to Crestwood University. They had hidden this from me in my previous life as well, wanting to keep me trapped and working for them. I walked to the village entrance and greeted Mrs. Gable, who ran the small general store. I told her I needed to make a phone call to an old friend of my parents. Mrs. Gable had watched me grow up in the Vance household and knew how difficult my life was. She refused to take the ration coupons I offered for the call and told me to use the phone as long as I needed. She had to step out to make a delivery and asked if I could watch the store for her. I accepted her kindness, silently vowing to repay her one day. I dialed the number I remembered so well. After 3 rings, a deep, powerful voice answered. "Hello, who is this?" My throat felt tight. "Professor Finch, it's me. It's Amelia." "Amelia, my dear girl, you finally remembered this old man," he said, his voice full of joy. When I told him I had been accepted to Crestwood University again, he was even more excited. "Your parents would be so proud. They would be thrilled to know how well you've done." I explained my current situation, and he listened patiently. His tone grew somber as he expressed his regret for not having done more to protect me. But when I told him my decision to leave, he was fully supportive and insisted I stay with him when I arrived in the city. After hanging up, I finally felt a sense of relief. I took the letters and the acceptance notice and hid them in a safe place. In just 3 days, I could finally change my life. When I returned to the Vance house, most of the relatives had left. Only Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Leo, and Clara Shaw remained. Clara was still holding one of the children. I walked in quietly, just in time to hear her anxious voice. "Leo, if Amelia doesn't want to raise them, what are we going to do?" Leo's voice was cold and decisive. "She will raise them, whether she wants to or not. I'm leaving for the army in a month, and you're going to college. Who else is going to take care of them?" Mrs. Vance added her support. "Don't worry, Clara. A child's mother should be an educated woman like you. Amelia grew up in our home. She wouldn't dare defy us." Mr. Vance spoke with the finality of the head of the household. "It's settled. She doesn't get a say in this family." There was no emotion left in me. Any feelings I had for them had been eroded by years of betrayal. I stepped into the room and all 4 of them turned to look at me surprised. They were trying to figure out how much I had overheard. I looked directly at Clara, who, perhaps out of guilt, avoided my gaze. Leo stepped in front of her. "This is my cousin Clara," he said, looking at me seriously. "She's been accepted into a teacher's college and will be staying with us for the next month." I simply nodded, pretending I hadn't heard their conversation. Behind me, I heard Mrs. Vance let out a quiet sigh of relief. After dinner, I went back to my room and started packing. I separated anything that reminded me of Leo and placed it to one side. I didn't own much, just a single winter coat and a few summer outfits. Compared to the thick wool coat Clara was wearing, my belongings were practically worthless. I remembered that Clara's coat had been made from the fabric coupons Professor Finch had sent me. Although he sent a generous amount of money each month, Mrs. Vance took most of it, and very little ever made it to me. They had raised me, but they had done it with his money. In a way, they had already been paid. As for Professor Finch, I would find a way to pay back every cent. Later that evening, for the first time in our marriage, Leo walked into my room without knocking. He tossed a wool scarf on my bed. "I've neglected you since we got married," he said, his tone sounding more like charity than an apology. "I brought this back from the city for you." I glanced at the scarf. The pattern was almost identical to the one on Clara's coat. It must have been made from the leftover material. He thought my silence was a sign of gratitude and decided to press his advantage. "I'll be joining the army in a month. You need to pay more attention to the 2 kids," he said. After a pause, he added, "Our parents raised us. It wasn't easy. You should be more mindful around the house. Do more chores. Don't act like you did tonight, as if none of this is your concern." I almost laughed. "Aren't you the one leaving in a month? Why don't you help your parents with the chores before you go?" He hesitated. "Of course, I'll do my part." Then he noticed a notebook and a woven bracelet he had once given me, now sitting in a corner of my desk. "What are these doing here?" he asked. "I was just cleaning up," I replied casually, throwing out what needs to be thrown out. His brow furrowed, and he seemed unsettled. He walked toward my suitcase as if to inspect it, but before he could, a sweet voice called out from the other room. Leo, there's no hot water left. He turned and quickly left, heading to the bathroom to heat water for Clara. He didn't come back that night. The next day, I didn't get out of bed until noon. Mrs. Vance didn't say anything about me sleeping in. She was pacing the main room, muttering to herself. How could it not be there? Where did it go? Amused, I watched her from the doorway. I knew she was looking for the money Professor Finch had sent. Mom, I said, what are you looking for? She stopped and looked at me, but she seemed to convince herself that I couldn't possibly know what was going on. It's nothing. The children are hungry. Go make them some formula. I smiled. Leo should do it. He's the one who will be gone in a month. Before she could argue, I walked out the door. I went to the village youth center where Leo was with his friends and, of course, Clara. I heard one of his friends joking, Leo, you really spoil Clara. How can you stand to let her leave for college? Clara was curled up in his arms. Stop talking nonsense. I just see Leo as an older brother. This only made them laugh harder. The atmosphere was light and cheerful. Leo looked pleased as he wrapped his arm around her. Even after you go to the city, don't forget me or the kids. Clara looked up at him and kissed his cheek. I won't, she said softly. Then the conversation turned to me. Leo's expression became serious. Amelia's tough, I heard him say. She's the type to stay home and take care of my parents and the kids. When it comes to talent or education, she's nothing compared to Clara. Even though I knew how he felt, his words still stung. I thought about the 20 years of my life I had wasted on him, and this was all he had to say about me. Just then, a young woman came in and saw me standing there. Amelia, what are you doing here? The room fell silent. Leo and Clara jumped apart. Clara looked at me guiltily. Amelia, you came without saying anything. Leo's eyes were sharp with annoyance. Why aren't you at home with the kids? What are you doing here? I noticed a faint smear of lipstick on his cheek. Clara rushed to wipe it away. Amelia, it's my fault. Leo and I were just joking around. Leo quickly composed himself. Clara and I grew up together. There's nothing to hide. His tone turned irritated. Can you stop being so paranoid all the time? It's because of that attitude that I don't want to come home. If only you had a little of Clara's gentleness. Leo, I interrupted him. He seemed to realize he had gone too far and fell silent. The 2 children you wanted to adopt yesterday are hungry, I said calmly. Your mom wants you to come home and make their formula. I spoke as if I hadn't seen anything, and since I had already refused to adopt the children, he couldn't argue. He had no choice but to follow me home, with Clara trailing behind. At dinner, Mr. Vance informed me, the children have been registered at the family hall. I just nodded. Mrs. Vance gave Leo a meaningful look. It's almost autumn, and Amelia's clothes are getting worn out. Leo, take her to the city in 2 days to buy some new ones. Leo hesitated, and Clara pouted. Clara should come too, Mrs. Vance added. It's on the way. She glanced at me. I nodded again, agreeing without a fight. The family seemed surprised by my compliance. In my mind, I was already planning. Going to the city was the perfect opportunity to buy my ticket out. I had waited 2 lifetimes for this day. 2 days later, just before dawn, Leo woke Clara and helped her get ready before knocking on my door. I opened it before he could. He was stunned to see me already dressed and with a bag packed. Why are you carrying such a big bag? I brought some food, I said flatly. Clara came up behind him and frowned. Amelia, we're going to the city, not to work in the fields. They have food there. Leo was annoyed. Fine, bring it if you want. Just don't complain and make me carry it. Nothing could ruin my mood. Don't worry, I said. I won't. We rode in the back of the village chief's truck, which he used for transporting pigs. Leo helped Clara onto the truck and laid down newspaper for her. I climbed up on my own and sat in a corner. A woman from another village saw Leo and Clara together and teased them. You 2 newlyweds are so close. Your husband is so considerate. Clara's face turned red and Leo froze. The village chief quickly corrected her. Ma'am, you're mistaken. This is his wife, he said, gesturing to me. The woman looked at me in the corner, confused. She mumbled under her breath, I thought concubines were outlawed, and here he is, showing off his mistress while his wife sits in the corner. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard. Clara pulled away from Leo, and his face was dark with embarrassment. He shot me an angry glare. I ignored them, clutching the bag that held all my hopes. When we got off the truck, Leo looked at me with impatience. "Here's 5 UN. Go buy yourself some clothes. Be back here at 3 o'clock sharp." He threw the crumpled bill at my feet and walked away with Clara. Before she left, Clara gave me a look of pity. I picked up the money. I knew Mrs. Vance had given him 50 ween, but in his eyes, I was only worth 5. It didn't matter. I had already told Professor Finch not to send any more money. What he had sent before was enough to sever my ties with this family. I turned and walked straight to the train station. As I boarded the train to Beijing, tears I had held back for 2 decades finally fell. After so many years in that village, I had never imagined a different life for myself. I was sent to the Vances when I was 5, and I fell in love with Leo. But to him, I was never a wife, just a maid, a tool. That love was more of an obsession. If my parents could see me, they would have been heartbroken by the life I had lived. I was grateful for this second chance. I hoped this time my life would be my own. When I arrived in Beijing, I first went to a hospital to submit some hair strands for a paternity test. Then, I went to Professor Finch's home. It had been years since I had been to the capital. Standing in front of the large, imposing house, I felt a little nervous. But a young woman at the door greeted me warmly. "You must be Miss Amelia. The old master told us you would be arriving soon. Please, come in." I stepped inside. The house was quiet. In the living room, 2 elderly gentlemen were playing chess. When Professor Finch saw me, he dropped his chess piece and hurried over with his cane. "Good girl," he said, his eyes filled with tears as he looked me over. "You've been through so much." His simple words soothed decades of pain. I hugged him and cried, a mix of sorrow and hope. I told him everything. The more he listened, the angrier he became. The other gentleman, Professor Davies, also looked serious. "Child," he said, "leave the marriage to me. We will get you a divorce." Professor Finch explained that Professor Davies' wife worked for the Women's Federation. When she heard my story, she was heartbroken and immediately filed for a forced divorce on my behalf. Professor Davies was also a senior professor in the chemistry department at Crestwood, the very subject I wanted to study. Classes didn't start for another month, and I stayed with the Finch family. They were all as kind as the professor. His 2 sons and daughter treated me like family, and their children filled the house with life. It was a warmth I hadn't felt since my parents died. I spent my days tutoring the grandchildren and felt at peace. When the first day of school arrived, I decided to move into the dorms, but promised Professor Finch I would come back for dinner every week. Before I left, I mailed 2 copies of the paternity test results and a letter explaining the situation. I didn't know it at the time, but my departure had thrown the Vance household into chaos. Leo and Clara didn't even notice I wasn't on the truck when they returned. It wasn't until the babies dirtied their beds and Mrs. Vance started yelling for me that they realized I was gone. Leo thought she was overreacting. She's not a child. She can find her way home. But after several days passed with no sign of me, they started to panic. Leo went back to the city to look for me, but he found no trace. Only an older woman at the ticket booth seemed to remember me. "The young girl in the yellow blouse?" she asked. "She took a train to Beijing. Said she was going to college." The news hit Leo like a physical blow. He stumbled home in a daze and exploded at his mother. "Why didn't you tell me Amelia got into college? She's gone to Beijing. She's never coming back." Mrs. Vance's face went pale. Mr. Vance dropped his pipe and it shattered on the floor. It was then that Mrs. Vance realized the money from Professor Finch hadn't arrived. She knew I must have gone to him. "We have to get her back," she declared. "She was born a Vance. She'll die a Vance." But the next day, the village chief brought them the legally binding forced divorce order from the capital. Mrs. Carter nearly fainted. The chief shook his head at Leo. "This is an official order, son. There's nothing I can do. From what I hear, Amelia got into Crestwood University. You all had better not bother her." Attached to the divorce was a full report of all the money and ration tickets the Finch family had sent over the years. The total was staggering. The entire village now knew how the Vances had treated me and how they had stolen my inheritance. They were left embarrassed and stunned. "She's really not coming back?" Mrs. Vance asked weakly. For the first time, Leo felt the weight of what he had lost. Back at Crestwood, I was walking out of the lab with my senior, Daniel Reed, when a classmate ran up to me. "Amelia, someone's at the gate for you. They said there's trouble at home." My heart dropped, thinking something had happened to Professor Finch. I rushed to the gate and heard a familiar voice shouting. It was Leo. "Amelia, let's go home. My parents are sick." I looked at him, my face a blank slate. "If Mr. and Mrs. Vance are sick, they should see a doctor. Clara can take care of them. Why are you here?" He flinched but forced a smile. "Amelia, I know you're angry, but my parents raised you. You can't just be ungrateful." Just then, Clara stepped forward, holding two disheveled children who were crying loudly. "Amelia, I know you're jealous of me and Leo, but how could you abandon your own children like this?" The students around us started to murmur, swayed by her performance. I just smiled coldly. I knew this would happen. "Jason," I said, "did your unit kick you out? Is that why you have time to come here and cause trouble? And you, Clara, did you not go to college because the truth came out about you having children with a married man?" Their faces went pale. Before I left for school, I had mailed a report detailing their affair to both Leo's military unit and Clara's university. Both of them had lost their futures. I then pulled out the paternity test results and the records of the money Professor Finch had sent. The crowd's opinion shifted instantly. They started to scold Leo and Clara for their deceit. Enraged, Leo lunged at me. Before I could react, a fist connected with his face, sending him to the ground. It was Daniel. He stood in front of me, shielding me. Leo got up and tried again, but Daniel easily took him down a second time. The other students, disgusted by Leo's behavior, joined in. By the time security arrived, Leo was bruised and defeated. I stood before him. "Leo Vance, I owe your family nothing. The money your parents spent on me was a fraction of what Professor Finch sent. You and Clara were together behind my back. Don't you dare say I abandoned you. We are nothing to each other now. If you ever bother me again, there will be consequences." He stared at me, stunned into silence. Then, he and Clara slunk away in humiliation. They never bothered me again. 4 years later, I walked out of Professor Davies's office with the results of my latest research. It was a major breakthrough for the country's aerospace program. Daniel invited me to dinner to celebrate. During the meal, he took my hand. "I understand you," he said gently. "You've devoted your life to your work. But don't forget to look around you once in a while." I lowered my head and, after a moment, nodded. Professor Finch later told me what happened to Leo. He lost his position and spent his days drinking. Clara couldn't handle the burden of 2 children and the failing Vance family. She ran away within a year. Leo was left to care for his sick parents and the 2 children alone. He neglected his parents, who died in agony from bed sores. The children grew up without discipline, getting into fights at school. One day, after being taunted by a neighbor, they came home crying, begging Leo to find their foster mother in the city. Perhaps he was drunk, or perhaps he had forgotten my warning. He bought 3 train tickets to the capital. He never made it. Too drunk to stand, he fell onto the tracks and was killed by an oncoming train. When the 2 children eventually found me, they were dirty and worn out. They cried as they told me that their father's last words were, "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I want to start over. Amelia, wait for me." By then, I had been awarded a national medal for my scientific contributions and was the youngest academician at the National Research Institute. I told the children the truth about their parents. They begged me to take them in, but I sent them to a welfare center. Showing them mercy would have meant being cruel to the woman I used to be. As I stood on a stage holding my award, surrounded by flashing cameras, I imagined my younger self standing in the light, mouthing the words, "Keep walking forward, don't look back." In the crowd, Daniel's eyes met mine, calm and unwavering, and I knew I never would.